hello, and I have with me my friend Indigo. And Austria asked me to do this a while ago, and I don't have any active sponsees that I'm working with right now, aside from people I do service with, and I've learned to just get quiet and just do whatever comes next. And the thought occurred to me, Indigo. I haven't heard their story. They've been a part of Lake City Young People, which you'll hear about me in a minute, but which is a home group of mine. So I've known Indigo for the last year plus, probably. And watching them on this journey has been really cool. I'm excited to hear more about their story, and I don't want to take too much time to introduce them, but really, my friend, it's been really cool to see you grow, to see you take on service, to see you get excited about district service, and to see what will come next. Is honestly, it fills me up. So I'm excited to introduce you to my friend Indigo.
Hi, Indigo, alcoholic addict. That was really sweet, and now I'm crying, and that's an awesome start. But yeah, so am I supposed to talk about what I'm finding difficult, or just experience drinking?
Whatever you want to talk about.
Just making sure. So I'm today's suspect, I suppose. My sobriety date is January 17th of last year. So I have just over a year and 3 months. And yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting road to hoe being a newcomer in AA. I didn't know much about this program before I came to it. I happened to have a friend who was coming back in the program. She mentioned to me she was on her way to a meeting, and I asked her if I could go with her. I wasn't fully convinced it would work for me because I was like, oh, alcoholism looks one way and my life looks this way, but it's also awful. So I'll try this. She was like, oh yeah, it's an open meeting. So like, non-alcoholic people are welcome, right? And I got offended, which was like a big red flag that I belonged here, because like only an alcoholic gets offended to be called not an alcoholic. But anyway, yeah, so thank you for asking me to speak. It's really good for me to be uncomfortable because if I'm comfortable, I'm not growing. If I'm uncomfortable, I am, and that's a big lesson that I've learned here. But yeah, when you asked me to talk, it was definitely like a ballooning of the ego, and then the like needle of fear came in. It's like, I'm not good enough. You're insane. I know we're all sick and insane here, but you really are. But anyway, yeah. So coming into this program, I definitely share the story of being in a miserable place. I found myself at like the jumping off point. And when I was growing up, I struggled a lot with like other issues, a lot of mental health and a lot of like, self-harmful behavior and self-destructive behavior. And alcohol and other substances, other forms of alcohol kind of became the next thing that I was looking for to like seek that sense of relief. And through my journey with drinking and becoming an alcoholic, I found myself back in old places that I had been in as a teenager. And I knew that like taking myself out of life was not an option. So I was willing to try anything. And when I first came into the meetings, I was really unsure of it. And I was listening to all the differences and, doing everything like wrong, quote unquote. Or that's at least what I was telling myself, right? Because I was full of that ego that tells me that I'm like worthless and I'm nothing and that like I don't belong here and all these people are judging me and they're all looking at me when the person in front of me is talking, which is not true. But it's definitely been quite like I'm really grateful for the kind of transformation that I've been able to have through the steps because like I was able to find a sponsor that I relate to. Because like I am trans, I'm non-binary. It's part of my story. It affects my recovery. Because I came into these rooms and I felt like I was the only one here, and I felt like every time that I heard people saying like, oh, like women should sponsor women and men should sponsor men and all of this stuff about stuff like that, like that's great that it works for a lot of people and that that's a general rule that can be followed. But I felt like I didn't fit into the criteria that built that rule. And over time, like I kind of had this sense that like my ability to be sober in this program was like dissolving before my eyes, like every time I heard that. And now I realize it's like not that way, but I found a sponsor that like is completely accepting of me and like also shares similar identities. That's super cool. Not required for me to be sober, but it has been really helpful because we have this understanding of each other beyond just like the alcoholism and the use. And yeah, so we started working the steps, and through the steps, like I've realized like that I was really fear driven, like a lot of us here, I'm sure, but like absolutely terrified of people. As you can see, I'm not looking at any of you in the face. And like, every time I got into a conversation, I felt like my skin was being peeled for me, and I just wanted to get out of it. And I would like politely participate and look for the like first opportunity to get out of that, right? But I learned in the first few like meetings of like just going around trying different groups and like getting into these different very uncomfortable conversations for me that like nothing was going to change if I didn't try something different. And thankfully there were people in these rooms that were telling me that. There were a few people that I had connected with just enough for them to give me the like advice that we get here. Look for the similarities, like just try, be open-minded. And so I like dove into fellowship, and that was also when I started going to the group that we share together. That's my home group, like City Young People. I started going to fellowship immediately, and I tried really hard to be that like silent person in the back who's like super cool and mysterious and like, like doesn't need to talk to anybody. But going to fellowship like with like just like 7 to 10 people, you can't really like maintain that, right? And I'm so grateful for that because if I hadn't started talking to people, I don't think that I would still be sober today. And that's been like a huge shift for me. It's like being able to talk to people and hold a conversation, and also being able to like be honest with people and show up as like myself and not this kind of version of myself that I was like constantly like, okay, how do I adjust myself for this person to like me better? Or, something like that. Um, so yeah, fellowship has been a huge part of it. Like there's on page 17, they talk about like the shipwreck and the ocean liner and how like we're like these people who are like super joyous to like be saved, and like there's camaraderie in that, which is kind of like where I came into my home group. And then it goes on to say that like it goes deeper than that because it's sustained by sharing a common solution. And I was able to see that in these people before I was able to start working. And that was a big thing that made me like want to be in this program and like want to continue to like do whatever it took, because like I was sitting in that room like being silent, not talking and trying not to share, and I was asking myself every day, because we talk about it all the time, I was like, am I really willing to do anything? Like, am I really willing to like talk in front of a group of people? Am I really willing to like take an hour-long bus ride to like be around a bunch of people I don't know? Like, am I really willing to completely change my life, or to like not talk to these people who don't respect like this new kind of thing that I'm doing? And eventually like the answer came out to be yes. And so, and I've had to continue doing that. And it got me into service, like I showed up to business meetings. I started participating in groups because like I knew that I had to like put myself more in the middle in order to stay sober and maintain my recovery, right? Because like we all know that recovery and sobriety are not one and the same. Like you can be sober and not have recovery, right? And so I really wanted that because I was surrounded by people who had what I wanted. And so like I went to a business meeting and they were all like going around the circle. When they would mention a position, a service position, and then you'd go around the circle and say like if you're available or not. And there's no explanation on like what that meant. And so like in my brain, I take things very literally and I'm like, okay, am I available? Like, do I want to do it? No, but like, am I available to do it? The answer was yes. And so I ended up being that person who like picks up the cigarette butts, like very classic AA story, and that was like how I started like opening my shell, because like I felt like I became a part of like through that service position. Because like, yes, I had been participating after the meeting with these newfound friends of mine, but like the service really like opened that kind of part of my mind to be like, I really am like actively participating here. Like I really am like able to contribute something, and that kind of like opened the path for me to believe that just my experiences and just my story are able to like help a newcomer potentially, or, touch somebody in some way that's useful for that. Yeah. And I'm keeping it together. But I came in and I thought like, okay, like you guys are gonna get me sober and then I'm going to build my recovery and I'm gonna keep myself here. But like really I found that it's kind of the other way around. Like I came in and I had to make that decision that I wanted this, or like make that realization, like be able to see that. And then like all of you guys are actually the ones that keep me here and that teach me things and like that exemplify applying the principles to your everyday living so that I can see these things that I want, not just like the nice car or the girlfriend or the whatever, but like, like being a kind, likable person, having compassion for somebody that you don't know who might come from like a totally different walk of life from you. And I found that like things like that have made me able to like be in a better way. Like we all say, like, we're not bad people trying to get good, we're sick people trying to get well. And I found that I've found wellness here because like I've been able to like build these attributes that I'd kind of always thought like, yeah, I'm a nice person. Yeah, I can be patient sometimes, but like when I look back on it, I really wasn't actually being that nice. I was gossiping and, I was insanely impatient. I don't think I was patient ever. But like, now I'm like actually building on these things so I'm able to be present. I'm able to be conscious of the way that I'm showing up. And I'm also able to like apply the tools that I've gotten here and through outside help, which is a huge part of my story that definitely don't have the time to go into, but I'm very grateful for, to actually like change my behavior and thereby change my thinking and who I am, for the better. Which like is something that makes me really emotional if I think about it too hard. So yeah, but I mean, I think that's most. I'm just like really grateful to be here. Like I know like when I first came into the meetings and people were saying like, I'm a grateful alcoholic and blah blah blah, and I have like 50 years. I'd be like, okay, first of all, that's a lie in multiple ways. And also like, why are you grateful for this thing that's like what I saw as like inherently a bad thing? And like in my very young 1 and a little bit years, like I've been able to see like I really am so grateful and more grateful every day to be an alcoholic and to have alcoholism, because like I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't know you guys and I wouldn't be able to make this kind of like conscious work for me if I wasn't an alcoholic, and that's an opportunity I would have never picked off the shelf in the supermarket, but like I'm so grateful that it just like showed up on my doorstep kind of thing. So yeah, that's truly all I've got. Thanks for having me.
Come up with something original to say about Lupita. And I don't know what I said the last time, but I loved hearing a while back that she also that Lake City Young People's was her home group, or one, it was her home group then, and she's now got another one she also attends. But somehow that just brings her into my heart a little bit more. I don't go there, but I should. I should just drop in once in a while. That would be great. We used to smoke in that meeting though, so I don't know. Just won't be the same. But anyways, I watched Lupita. I watched her, come to area service as a DCM and listen to her. I think, we had similar mentors. I think Ernie was one of yours as well. Is that right? Yeah. So, it just, there just kind of had been a little kind of a connection, and then to just watch her grow in service for me, has just really been awesome. And I'm really proud, to say that I know Lupita, I see what she's doing. She, now she's doing alternate delegate stuff, and she's right on top of it. I saw the couple of emails come out about GSR schools and DCM schools, and right on. So I'm looking forward to hearing this new version of your story.
Thanks, guys. Good. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Again, I'm Lupita. I'm an alcoholic. Hello. And I am happy to be here on almost the anniversary. It's a week after, I guess, the anniversary of the initial Seattle group. The first one, you said, was April 19, I think. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Gosh, okay, where do I start? So I said I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 16, 2006. If you're a person like me who will spend half of the meeting like trying to piece together and like sleuth like how old this person is, when did they get sober, how much time do they have? Like I would literally spend half of the meeting trying to figure this out. And like people are telling their story and I'm like, okay, so they went to high school at this time. I'm like not listening at all. So I will save you that time so you can listen. Got sober when I was 20. I'm 18 years sober now, so I'm 38. If you want to, like, if you solved all the math parts, but anyway, so that's my sobriety date. I have, like Ashu said, 2 home groups actually. Lake City Young People, which is Tuesday nights, and then Kitchen Group, which is Thursdays. I have a sponsor. I've got a service sponsor. I'm pretty pretty busy with service work these days, and I love that. I love it now. I don't know that people around me love it quite as much. I was in grad school a year-ish ago, and I was in a pretty serious service commitment at the time, and graduate school, and working full time, and trying to squeeze in a meeting here and there, and talk to my sponsor every now and then, and it was a grind. Like I was acutely aware that my alcoholism isn't only active when I drink. I can distract myself with graduate school, with service work, with taking phone calls from alcoholics, with going places and presenting things and, going to work and sleeping, but at the end of the day, I still have alcoholism and it just starts to come out in different ways. I have different symptoms now. To backtrack quite a bit, like I said, I got sober when I was 20. I started drinking. I used to tell my story and say that I started drinking pretty late in life because I started drinking when I was like 16, 17. I don't really know. And I remember coming to AA and hearing people tell stories of they start drinking when they're 12 and they're doing all these things when they're like 10 and they're 15 and they're stealing this and that. I'm like, man, what a loser, man. I started drinking at 16 in like Seattle Public Park, like parks, and in friends' basements, and it's so funny. I went to a funeral this morning for a friend of mine's dad. A bunch of us went to high school together, and I saw people that I was like, remember we used to hang out in your parents' basement a lot and like do stupid things? And she was like, yep. Anyway, and I was like, I drive by the house all the time, and I always think of the stupid stuff we did down there. Anyway, so started drinking at 16. And I figured, what a chump, but drinking was fun and it was fine. And then I went away to college. So I grew up here in Seattle area, and then I went to school in Northern California, and it was nice to be so far away from my family because I didn't have anyone to report to, and no one could make sure I was going to class or, keep on top of me. And the alcoholic in me really enjoyed that. But it escalated quite quickly to the point where my roommate and some other friends from the dorm had an intervention with me, and I think it must be the goofiest thing to look, like, to be a fly on that wall, to see 3 or 4 and 19-year-olds sitting in a dorm room, and they're sitting me down and they're like, okay, Peta, we think you have a problem with drinking. And then I stopped listening. I don't know what they said next. I have honestly no clue. Because I just checked out. I said, no, I need new friends. Like, you guys don't understand me. And it escalated to the point where they said, yeah, you can do you, but we don't like how you're treating us. We don't like who you are. we want nothing to do with you. And then they were conveniently just never around when I was around. I bumped into them accidentally once when I was at work and I was drinking and I ran out of alcohol. So I had to walk home to my dorm room to get more alcohol, and they were there and they were startled to see me. And I was like, oh, kind of like when you turn the lights on and everything scurries, and they were like, oh, you're here. Looking back, that's the moment I should have realized that they were actively avoiding me, right? It wasn't convenient that they were never around. That was intentional. They did not want anything to do with me. And took me a little while longer to understand what they were doing and what they were saying. I was seeing a therapist or something. I don't know if she was at the time, but she was the only person in my life that I was actually honest with about what I was doing, how much I was drinking, how often, what happened. Everybody else, I was lying to, and I could black out, and people don't always know that you're blacked out, and so you can kind of play it off. Or I'd bump into people, and they would, say something, and I would just kind of play it off, like, oh yeah, I remember that. I was at that thing. I know what you're talking about, and trying to hide all the time that I don't remember anything. But I was telling this lady about again how much and how often and what had happened and what probably what was going on inside of me, and she and I'll on at least one occasion suggested I look into Alcoholics Anonymous, which looking back now, being in general service, I'm like, man, whoever, whether she was in school or whether she, knew somebody, like one of us got to her, right, and said, hey, there's this 12-step program for people who exhibit these problems, and she knew, and she just said, you should look into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I took it under advisement, but didn't. And eventually, I got to the point where I was actually miserable, right? I was actually miserable, and it stayed miserable. And I was starting to have some physical things happening. I think it was an anxiety attack. I thought it was a heart attack at the time. I had a 9 a.m. volleyball class that I could never make it to. Like, how easy is that to go to, right? And I love sports, but I was never awake for that. One day I'm getting ready to go, and I'm like, I'm going to make it today for this 1 credit course, And I was having these chest pains. I'm like, oh God, something is not right. And I called the lady, and I'm like, my chest is hurting. And she's like, oh my God, go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I think it's going to be fine. I just think I shouldn't go to class today, and looking back now, I'm like, what a dumb. Like, I hadn't gone to any classes, and then I called her with this chest pain, which I really was having, and I did go see a doctor eventually, and I think it was an anxiety attack, that I was just, my body was breaking down and freaking out, Shortly thereafter, I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was going to meetings in the town where I got sober. I was going to school in Northern California, and while I lived up in Seattle, I was living really in California, but I didn't really get connected. I didn't really do anything, and I don't ever consider this actually trying the program. I was going to meetings, and I was kind of dry, and then I started smoking weed, actually, and I remember early on going to meetings and people saying, hey, come with us, get a home group, we're going to dinner, like, we're your friends, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, no, thank you, that's really kind, but I'm from Seattle, so I'm totally connected up there. And then I'd come home for like winter break or summer break and spring break, something like that, and people would be sweet and kind of like, hey, we're going to fellowship, like, let's all go, like, or we're doing this volunteering thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet, thank you, but I have people in California, I'm totally plugged in, like, I'm good. Which, as you can guess, gets very lonely when you keep pushing everyone away who's trying to be nice and helpful. And it got to the point where I eventually saw that I had no choice in whether, I got high or whether I got drunk. I finally understood that I had this thing inside of me that was not okay. And the only time this thing that I was okay, or that I thought I was okay, was when I was usually drunk, right? When I was doing something. And I had some other vices that I've since supplemented that with, unfortunately. But I actually started going to AA and taking this seriously. And eventually I got a sponsor. It didn't work out for some reason. And then I was trying to because it didn't work out and I felt incredibly rejected. I'm like, all right, for my next sponsor, I need to find the right person. She's going to have, and I have like this list of these things, like she should be this, she should be that. Like, here's what I need it to be, because I have a plan. And I'm on the phone with a lady at the time, telling her all this. I'm like, all right, so I have this plan. Like, I got to find a person who does this and who is that, and I'm running through all this stuff. And she had a handful of years at the time, and I'm sure was exasperated and was like, my goodness, like, Peter, just pick somebody. Like, it really doesn't matter. Just pick somebody. Like, just ask someone, And I was like, oh, okay. Like, will you do it? And she was like, yeah, of course. Like, here's what we're going to do now. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's one of those moments, like, that's the first instance that I can think of that I just surrendered and said yes. And it all worked. And it was okay. It did all work out, but it was okay. I was okay. That lady sponsored me for like 15 years after that, and I would complain about being 20 and being sober and graduating college sober. Like, all my friends are having mimosas and doing fun stuff and getting drunk, and I had to be sober. And my sponsor got sober when she was 15. And she's like, oh gosh, yeah, that must really be hard going to college sober. Like, I did high school sober, right? Like, try going to, and I'm like, okay, fine, I hear you, and she had a way of putting me in my place in the kindest way. And I think she saw a lot of herself in me, a lot of chaos and a lot of confused young person, in addition to being an alcoholic. And she just was kind and gentle. And I've heard friends of mine who have stories about their sponsor, like, which I hear it as like so harsh and did this and this. And I'm like, I would have turned around and left. Like, I would not have taken that. My sponsor knew that I needed kid gloves. Like, she knew that I would take what she was saying, and I would argue a little bit, and then I'd give up, and then we kind of do this dance, and I'd eventually do what she said, and yeah, it was great. She took me through the steps, and it was great to work with someone who got sober so young, and I didn't even realize that when I asked her, which is how it just works out sometimes. I remember doing my my second step, my first second step I did with her. We had done the first step. And we're on step 2, and we're talking about being restored to sanity. And I'm arguing with her at length, in her car outside of a Mexican restaurant. And I'm just like, I'm just not letting it go. And she eventually said, like, okay, here's the deal. Do you, the people that we see at our home group, all these people we know, and she starts naming her. She's like, okay, do you think they're alcoholics? I'm like, yeah, sure. And she's like, okay, do you think that they are different now than they were when they first got sober? Like, do you think there's some change, in that? Yeah, okay, whatever, and she's like, okay, great. That they've shifted over the years, is something, right? Do you think this can work for you? Like, do you think that could occur in you? And I was like, yeah, okay, I guess. And then she's like, great, we're moving on to step 3. Get on your knees, we're going to pray. Like, and that was it, right? Like, and she knew that I didn't need to go to the rabbit hole. I didn't need to get the dictionary out and look at what everything means, because I already do that, right? Like, I already pick things apart. I intellectualize them. I overthink everything. And I needed to be active. I needed to be in action, doing things, moving through the steps to get some sanity in my life, to get some relief, to find peace. And I remember writing my 4th step with her, and being embarrassed with how small it was and how short it was. Again, I hear other people's stories, like I mentioned earlier, that they drank so young, and I can't be an alcoholic because I started drinking at 16, and I hear people tell these stories about their 4th step. It's 14 pages front and back, and it's 3 notebooks full, and they used a whole pencil to the nub to write it out. And I'm like, God, I don't think I'm doing this thing right. Mine's like maybe 3 pages, because I just started making stuff up. Like, I started like adding things, like my first grade teacher. Like, I was just like really scraping the barrel, and I told my sponsor, I was honest with her. I'm like, Liz, I don't think I'm doing this right. I think I'm missing a lot of stuff. And she shared her experience with me, which was, when you get sober young, you may not have the same resentments other people do, right? Or regardless of age, even people may not have, everyone's story is different. And that hers was also short and small, and it was perfectly fine, and if I'm honest and sincere, and I'm doing my actual best, it'll be okay. That's good enough, and okay. And we met a time and we read, and or I read it to her, and we moved into the amends, and that was a really cool experience to see It was not cool. I take that back. Looking back, it was cool to see what I took away from the amends. The most meaningful one, I tell the story the most, is the amends I made to my youngest brother. I have two younger brothers, and when I was away at school, all I cared about was drinking. When I came home from school, all I cared about was drinking. I'd lock my door, I'd drink in my room, steal my parents' alcohol, and just drinking. And was never really around for them. And despite that, never saw how I affected anybody. I'm away at school. I'm not affecting my family. I haven't lost my job. My family isn't mad at me. The survey of questions, am I an alcoholic? Like none of it applied to me. I'm so different than these questions. And made an amends to my youngest brother. And I should tell him this. I should tell him that I'm thankful that he said this. And he won't have any memory, I'm sure. But he said to me, yeah, thank you. You were a terrible sister. And that gutted me. That's how these aren't supposed to go. These aren't supposed to go like that. You're supposed to say, thank you, I'm proud of you, this is great, good for you. Like, that's what you're supposed to say. Like, that's the script I practiced, and I did not say that to him. I just stood there shell-shocked. And he went on to say that, he was having a really rough time in high school and in middle school, and he wanted someone that would listen to him and that would be there for him, and that was me. But because of how I was behaving, I guess my mom had said he couldn't contact me, and, when you're in middle school, your parent controls the phone, and so he wanted his sister and I wasn't there. And I made my amends to my mom, same kind of thing. I wanted a daughter. Like, just, that's how you can make this right. She also did have like an itemized list of the money I owed her. So there was also that. She had kept track for years. She's like, also this. She's like, but also she just wanted a daughter, and I learned, and it wasn't even the amends, but my sponsor showed me how to do these things that were showing up for people, and I never connected this till right now, how they need it. Not on my time, not how I wanted, not how I envisioned it, but just for them, not for me. So my sponsor would have me call my mom every Sunday, and I wouldn't be able to get off the phone until she wanted to hang up, which none of you in this room know my mom, but she likes to talk, and it could be a while. Like, I would love to say, all right, well, I gotta go, we got an intramural thing, or I have homework, something just to get off the phone. And I didn't get to use that. I get to, okay, just what's going on, Mom? How's the weather? How's the family? That's the dog doing? Like, it was just, this is for her. I get to listen and roll my eyes and put myself on mute, but it's the action. I was doing it, and I did it every week. And I moved back to Seattle, and we started doing Sunday dinners, and I'd go to visit her and my dad, and I got to rebuild a relationship that I don't know that I ever knew I wanted or that I wanted, but it changed just from doing those things, right? I don't know what will come of these actions. I don't know what will come of writing these things down in a fourth step, or asking for defects to be removed. I don't know when they'll be taken or which ones are on my, I don't know what the outcome will be, but I know that if I'm putting in the work, something will happen. Something different will occur. I can't even label whether it'll be good or bad or fun. I don't even know that. I just know if I'm doing these things, something different will occur. And so by knowing the stuff, I built a relationship with my mom, who she and I had a very tenuous relationship growing up, probably mostly because I was a bit of a jerk and very difficult. But I think as a result of me changing and me being in the program, she changed. She saw how I was involved with AA and involved with people and the stuff I was doing, and she loosened her grip a little bit, and she relaxed a little, and I was about to turn 10 years sober, I guess, in the summertime. So this is maybe June. So she was really planning ahead. Somehow it came up, talking about sobriety or something. And she's like, well, how much time do you have? I'm like, well, late summer, midsummer, I'll have 10 years. And she's like, wow, okay. Like, is there like a party? Do you do a thing? Like, she's just totally into it. I'm like, not really, Mom. Like, they announce it and I get a little thing and everyone claps. Like, that's kind of it, It's not a big presentation. And she's like, okay, well, I'd really like to be there. Can I come? Sure, Mom, it's an open meeting. You can come, whatever. Makes you happy. Because it did, right? Like looking back, it made her happy. She wanted to be there. Every time, man. She died in April. Yeah, no, March. Like, she died in late March. So she couldn't make it. But time. From doing this stuff, from being around you folks in these rooms, she wanted to be there, and she couldn't. Which I'm grateful that she wanted to be there. I've talked to, my baby brother. She died, and then shortly thereafter, I had a trip to Japan planned, and so he and I were hanging out in Japan for a couple weeks. Well, he lived there. I was visiting, but he was telling me all these what's it called? Like regrets he had. He's like, I wish I'd asked mom this, and I wish I had done that, and I wish I had done this, and I got to be there for him and just hear that stuff and sympathize, but not feel that way. Like I didn't have regrets. Like I was there with her on her deathbed. I got to be there every time when she was real sick in the hospital, and I just got to show up. And we still kept doing Sunday dinners, and they looked very different because she could hardly move, and so we'd kind of get creative. But I just got to show up for her, and show up for my dad, and offer to be of help, and take time off work just to, all right, what can I do? Like you've got a lot on your plate, like let me help with something, and it was the process of doing the steps, that I saw. I didn't have to do it the way my brain told me. My brain makes up a plan and it makes up the outcome, and then I get upset when neither happen, or either don't happen. And and I have learned over the years, that I can be okay with not having a plan. I can be okay with the plan changing. And I don't have to constantly know everything all the time. I can be better at living life on life's terms when I just am here. I can just say yes, or no, I guess, but usually I just say yes to things. Say yes, just show up, and then just see what I can do to help people. See what I can do to give to someone else, and when I'm in that space, and when I'm just doing things, I find that I'm mostly okay. I don't need to have all the stuff or all these things in a certain way so I can be okay. And I've done a recent 4-step, well, 5th and 6th really with my sponsor, and I've seen that I have these defects that are all about fear of like not knowing what's next. And so I try to control and manage so that if I can be okay when I know that these things will all be this way, and if I don't think you are doing things the way I would do them, my way is probably the better way. And so then I get, upset at you for that, and all this comes down to, this root cause, this root defect of, I don't think I'm okay. I don't believe that I'm okay. I don't trust that I'm okay. Which a friend described one time as like, he just didn't think the program would work for him. Like he just didn't believe it. Right. I was maybe 5-ish years sober when I finally actually understood step 1. And I hear people at meetings talk about step 1 is the only meeting you have to do perfectly. And I don't know what perfect looks like, but I really didn't do a great step 1. And I mean, I don't know, I did it fine, right? I didn't drink, but I didn't really get it. Like I didn't understand, I wondered every now and then if I was an alcoholic for the first like 5 years of my recovery. I'm young. I was in college. Was it just a phase? I saw, like Indigo said, I saw all the outsides and I heard all the stories and they were different than mine. And so maybe this won't work for me. Maybe I'm different. Maybe I'm not actually an alcoholic, and I don't think I ever actually said that to anybody. But what I got from people was them just saying, yeah, that's fine. Just come anyway. Like, it's cool. Just come to the meeting. Let's go to dinner afterwards. We're going to this thing. Raise your hand for this. Like, I just kept saying yes to stuff and kept, being involved. And over the years, that's morphed to look a little bit differently, when I say yes to things and get involved with stuff. And I was talking to some friends that I haven't seen in quite a few years at this funeral this morning. And they're like, so what's going on with you? What's new? And I'm like, oh, what's new? And I'm like, well, it's kind of awkward to tell a close acquaintance, like, I don't even know if they know I'm sober, but it's sort of weird to be like, well, I'm sober and I do this thing. And what takes up most of my time now is this general service stuff I do. Asha mentioned being alternate delegate, and that takes quite a bit of time. And it's just so awkward to look at somebody and be like, well, nothing, right? Like, 'cause I can't even I'm so excited to tell my dad I got elected alternate delegate. And he's like, okay, so is that at your meeting or, yeah, man, yeah, sure. That's okay. Whatever, Dad, you don't get it, and which is fine, right? It's the most humbling thing. Like, they don't care, right? They're like, what, are you coming over for dinner? Like, are you doing the thing? Are you, like, have you done this yet? I'm like, oh, all right, okay. Which is the best, I think so often I see people in these rooms and I think, oh wow, they've done this or they've done that, or they're, a fancy AA, they've done whatever, and then you scale back out and you're like, oh my gosh, they're just a person, right? You're like just another alcoholic making their way through life, and I recently was talking to somebody. Well, actually, it was actually Anita brought it up. That there are, people in these. What did she say? She was saying that there are people who have served Alcoholics Anonymous, whether it's at the home group level or in general service, but there are people who have been doing service so that this can be around for us, right? And when Austri opened this up by reading part of what Bernard Smith wrote, it always gets me every time talking about the alcoholic just blocks away and the alcoholic born today destined for alcoholism, and so there are people ahead of me, people in this room who were in AA, when I was born, right? And I don't say that to make anyone feel any type of way, but just to think of, wow, I was just born and people were doing this. They were collecting some attrition and they were paying rent so they could keep having the meeting. Maybe there wasn't people in the room, but there's people in the world that were sober when I was getting born, and I owe them a debt of gratitude. And I was actually happened to talk to a past delegate who was delegate a while ago, and we're chatting, and I said, well, trying to put it in perspective, like what years were you delegate? And you went to the conference in New York and making decisions for AA about new publications and updating things, and he was like, well, God, what did he say? We started in odd years, yeah. So he said 87, 88. 1987, 1988. And I look at him and I was like, I don't mean to make you feel old, Dennis. But I was 1 year old when you're at the conference. Like, so here's this guy that I know pretty well I'm a year old and he's off, sober, making decisions for Alcoholics Anonymous, and keeping the doors open so that I could be here, and I got the pleasure earlier today to work with a home group on some stuff. And I was talking to them about, the point of what we're doing is trying to make this available so that people can keep finding us, creating a space for Alcoholics Anonymous to continue, right? I like that Bill called it a movement, right? That we don't need the buildings, the facilities, and they're nice to have for Seattle winters and springs and fall. But we don't, we don't need the stuff, right? I don't need to rely on reading the big book and quoting the pages to get me to stay sober today, right? I've got this thing, and I have found a higher power, and I found that I can get quiet and I can find the answer inside of me. And when I can't, and when I cannot find the quiet, I can call other people. I call my sponsor, I call friends, and they help me navigate what's noise and what's truth, and what we're doing, to continue this movement is just showing up and saying yes, and being available to help Alcoholics Anonymous continue to help other people. My job today, and I know it says in the book, but I believe this is my calling, and there's nothing besides this. My job is just to help people today, period. I was talking to a friend today about this lady I know who's just annoying me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's doing this, she's doing that, she's so annoying. My friend's like, well, maybe you just need to help her. Maybe how are you going to be of service to her? I'm like, well, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear, yeah, you could just say no and set boundaries. Under the guy's just, not talking to her, whatever, writing her off. But the second he said that, I was like, you are totally right. I'm thinking of this person's annoying. I wouldn't do it that way. Never mind that I was a maniac newcomer. I've heard stories after the fact since of they continue to allow me out in public with this AA group when they should not have. They should have said, ma'am, you do not know how to be in public. You are not welcome back next week. But they kept letting me come out and gradually showing me and we don't do that. We don't make a mess. We tip the server. They just brought me in and they showed me what to do, and for me to do anything besides that for anyone else is hypocritical and just not fair, and what I've learned recently in my recovery, it's been really obvious recently is just that I'm uniquely qualified to help alcoholics, right? A lot of us are in these rooms, and we all have our experiences that brought us here. And I have some experiences I've been able to share with people, the things I've experienced sober, and not. And my only thing that I can offer today is me. I can give up myself and I can show up for me, for you, bring me to show up for you. And when I do that, everything quiets and I'm okay. Right? When I do that, it's just everything's fine. Like there's just stillness, right? It's calm underneath the duck's feet, right? It's okay. And when I try to ram things or shove things in and make a million things and make my schedule, then that's when it gets to be incredibly chaotic, and that's the chaos that I don't need in my life anymore. I don't crave that chaos to remove me, from what I'm actually feeling. And so I'm grateful to have been asked to come out and share this part of myself with you. Thank you, Austria, for asking me out to speak. Indigo, thank you for coming out here as well. And that is it from Lupita.
Yeah.
Over now.
Good job.